All right. Welcome, welcome. So I want to go into a little bit more on judgment or non-judgment. If we go back to that original definition of mindfulness being paying attention on purpose in the present moment and with non-judgment. For me, that non-judgment has been the most difficult part. It's like this is the part that I keep coming back to over and over and over again. It's like I conceptually get, what it means to be in the present moment versus the past or the future, even though that's difficult. And I can conceptually understand, you know, paying attention on purpose rather than being on automatic pilot. But that non-judgment is just so foreign to me that it's like I feel like I have to keep coming back at it from different layers. And so like one of the ways that we've looked at that is, looking at it from a place of curiosity versus judging, or separating out fact versus interpretation. What is something you can just observe and measure versus a conclusion that you've drawn? And another way that I came across it here recently was looking at this difference between recognition and judging, but looking at it from that felt sense point of view. So if you remember, when we're searching through our, what we're experiencing in the present moment, we check in with our bodies, with our emotions, with our thoughts. These are the internal experiences that we have. And it's really interesting to look at the physical cues that go with what happens when I'm judging versus the physical cues that happen, oh, I'm recognizing something or I'm observing something. Judging is so sneaky. It's so subconscious. It's like it happens back here somewhere. That if I tune into what my body is feeling, a lot of times I can get those clues. Oh, wait, there's a judging happening somewhere. It's like I've learned what those body cues are to go, look, right here. There's something sneaky under the surface here. There's a judging happening. So it's really interesting to start to build your repertoire, if you will, of what does your body feel like when it's judging? What does your body feel like when it's observing or when it's recognizing something? I notice for myself when I'm judging, there's almost this like tightness. It's like I almost just a slight pulling in. It's just and I could feel it in my mouth sometimes, in my jaw, just that little bit of clenching. And I feel it in my belly. There's like I suck my belly in. Or a leaning forward, but there's just this little bit of like, I don't know, or that, but there's for me, it just feels like I'm pulling in. I'm like tightening up, and I can feel it all the way from my belly up to my jaw. When I'm observing something, I almost feel like I'm puddling out. There's almost this like opening or expanding feeling. It's like I'm just kind of like opening wider and wider. Something is coming in. Or if I recognize something like clicks for me, that's that, oh, there's almost like this brightness, this opening out. So it's like I can feel a difference between expanding and contracting. There's an observation, a recognition, there's an openness, expanding outwards. It's almost like I'm getting bigger and bigger and can take in more information. Whereas when I'm judging, I'm closing in, I'm shutting out, I'm like tuning away from information. And it's kind of interesting too, thinking about, when we judge something, we make it concrete. We lock it into a form. It has to hold its place. And then there's no freedom for it to move or change. When there's observation or recognition, there's space for something to move or change or develop. So it's another one of those little sneaky things. It's like if there's a place where you notice you feel stuck or it's, concrete, or there's no place of movement, perhaps there is a judgment there that's locking it into place. At least I know that's true in my own experience. But again, for me, it's that I can feel that expanding when I'm observing, and this almost locking down when I'm judging. But this is one of those things that we all have different body cues. It's like, what is it for you that you notice? When you're judging versus you're aware of something. And they can be really subtle. And so, this could be, subtle sensing or felt sense. It's just those really tiny changes in our body language. It's like, oh, that. It's like, even if it's like my shoulders just kind of tightened up a little bit and my neck kind of pulled down. Sometimes those little cues can be enough going, oh, there's a pulling in that's happening right now, shutting off. What is that? So that's what we're going to play with today, is just trying to put a finger on those cues. What is it? What does it feel like for you? And you can feel the actual physical sensations of tension or relaxation or pressure or pain, temperature change, a sense of lightness or heaviness. Feel free to use what we'd call, felt senses or more metaphorical descriptions. It's like we all know what that butterfly in the stomach feels like, or, a broken heart. It's like, those are real physical sensations, of what that feels like. So sometimes it can feel like just something goes, and you can feel that just like cracking in your chest. So use whatever comes up for you, whether it's a metaphor or a physical sensation, whether it's very just concrete. But what are your cues? What works for you to tune you into where is there judging and where is there observing? All right. All right. So we will just jump on in. So starting with that breath, noticing your breathing, coming into this present moment on purpose, letting all of your awareness come to your internal experience. What's happening right now for you? And starting with those physical sensations, the sensation of breathing is that most direct anchor into being right here, right now. Noticing the air as you breathe, feeling the air at your nose, maybe filling your lungs. And then exhaling. Noticing how your body relaxes, lets go, sinks down. And then maybe a little pause at the end before the inhale just naturally starts up again. Maybe noticing where your attention wants to go as you're watching your breath, whether you're drawn to the front of your chest, the back of your chest, your belly, your nose, your throat. Just noticing what grabs your attention in your breathing, and just staying with that, watching the rhythm of your breath. Noticing the inhale and the exhale. Maybe noticing that as you shift your attention around from the chest to the belly to the neck to the nose, what it feels like. What does your breathing do when you're watching it in your belly? What does it feel like when you're watching it in your chest? Beginning to notice those movements, the small muscle movements that happen as you're breathing. I can feel those little muscles in my back as the ribs expand out. Or the way the diaphragm pulls down, I can feel that little tug in my low back. And as always, as the mind wanders, you notice it, and you just gently bring it back to your breath over and over again, 100 times. Because that is the practice of mindfulness. Noticing where you are, and then being very intentional with non-judgment, coming back to right now in this moment. And so as you're breathing, I'm going to start by just playing with, how do you judge your breathing, your breath? Oftentimes I notice little places that I want to change, like that's too shallow. No, that's a short, shallow breath. I'm not breathing all the way down into my belly. There's those little desires to change it, to make it be a good breath. Or I notice a little catch in my breathing. I'm like, oh, what do I need to do? How do I need to fix it? So when you're watching your breath, what judgments come up for you? It might even be that, am I doing this right? How do I need to make this breathing happen? Am I focusing in the right place? Just kind of looking around, noticing judgments. Maybe noticing judgment about not being able to pay attention and watching your mind wander, thinking about other things. And then that little step back. Like, how does my body respond when I make those judgments? So it's like you're being really deliberate. It's like, okay, I want to judge. I want to judge my breathing. And I want to notice what happens when I do that. I notice a furrowing in my brow. It's like I'm concentrating harder. Like there's a little squint in my eyes. More of a sharp focus. There's a sharpness, leaning forward, even as I'm kind of pulling my shoulders in. What do you notice? And then perhaps letting go of that judging, switching over to observing or recognizing, just watching the breath. What does watching the breath feel like? Just as it is, simply noticing patterns, the rhythm of the breath, where there's muscle movement. Perhaps the mind might get just a little bit quieter. Or just inhaling and exhaling. And then again, that little step backwards to observe and watching, how is my body responding to observing breath? I notice I feel a sinking down into my belly and my hips, a widening out at my base. It's almost like I get bigger and more expanded, but it's lower in my body, whereas the judging tends to be up higher in my head. At least right here in this moment, it does. Maybe even noticing that difference. Observing the breath, those little physical sensations that change, and judging the breath. And now go ahead and bring up that normal thing that you're always kind of judging yourself about. We all have them. That thing where you just kind of sigh, like, oh, that. It can be just a little thing, a familiar thing. That thing where you just like, yep, that's what I do. Even as I say that, I can feel just the heaviness in that and the pulled in. It's that pulling in and hunkering down, judging. I've judged myself for that. And there's almost that sigh of resignation. Like, yep, that is a place that is just locked in. And as you bring up that very familiar judgment of yourself, notice what happens in your body. Those little changes in your muscles or body posture, even temperature change. It's like I noticed I got a little bit cooler. It's like all the blood just kind of pulled in from my periphery. What are those little cues that your body does when you're judging? It might be similar or different than when you were noticing your breath and judging your breathing. Again, just kind of building up that repertoire. These are some of the things that my body does when I'm judging. And then letting go of that. And then maybe picking something that you like to just watch. It might be walking outside and watching the clouds, or watching birds flying outside, or watching dogs play. What is something that you like just watching, just observing, just noticing? What happens in your body now? What do you notice in your chest, your belly, your forehead? What do you notice in your posture? I notice I'm breathing easier. It's almost like the breath just gets a little bit deeper and smoother. And then again, maybe comparing back to just observing the breath. And some, the feelings might be similar or different. But just starting to get that familiarity. Like, oh, this is what it feels like when I'm observing. And that contrasting, this is what it feels like when I'm judging. And sometimes it can be interesting to kind of toggle back and forth between these two places. Like, oh, yes, observing, just watching the clouds as I'm walking outside. What that feels like, this open expansiveness. And then the judging, oh, I snapped again. Oh, and the pulling in the tension in my stomach. It's like I can really feel just the open, expand, and then close real tight. Like that playing, just playing with yourself, observing, judging, and then observing again. And again, that acknowledgement that there's no good or bad, that just noticing, judging gives us information that allows us to get closer to understanding what's really going on. And that is useful. So noticing, judging can be really exciting. Like, oh yes, something new, something to look at, something to explore, more information. And then letting go of all of that. Just staying right with your breath. The inhale and the exhale. And as you're breathing, almost that expanding awareness to your whole body, breathing all the way out to the very edges of yourself. And then exhaling right at the center of yourself. Taking a few more breaths. And then when you feel ready, opening your eyes.